but there are a couple games that jumped out at me when I was preparing this. I was thinking that in these games, some really interesting exchanges happened. So this position should look familiar to you guys. In this position, black could have played knight g4 and traded some pieces. Possibly good for them. Now in this position, I got a really interesting idea. So I played f3, which is typical, but I didn't castle yet. And after bishop d7, queen d2, and this trade, my opponent played a5. And this stops them from playing queen a5. Their idea is to play a4 and then queen a5. But for now, they can't play queen a5. And so I thought, you know, they're playing on the queen side. Why don't I play on the king side? So I played king f2. This move's not totally stupid. It's not totally great either, but I think it does have some sting to it. And in the game, I got a winning position and blew it. I should probably have just castled kingside and played the grind. So they played bishop c6, I played h4, going for this kingside attack, and then I played some caveman nonsense with g4. I think this move was probably not so good. I should probably have backed off and played like rook e1 or something. But he kind of allowed all of my ideas to work. He played g3. I don't know why. I really couldn't explain it. And after rook he1, suddenly both of my rooks are attacking the king very effectively. He played e5, which I think is a good move, and had a major impact on the outcome of the game. I think if he couldn't play e5, I would just win. But after bishop e3, king h7, I brought my king back to open up the rook. Played bishop g5 to create some tension. But after king g8, I was kind of stuck. My calculation was not really very good. This is one of my worst tournaments. Actually, in the last couple of years, I played a bunch of really bad tournaments. I'm not sure if it's... I'm not sure why I played so badly, but that's just the fact of the matter. But I think that learning new strategies and new ways of thinking is very helpful for self-improvement. I think probably I didn't give my opponent enough stimulus checks to win the game. So after king g8, I was thinking about all the tactical possibilities here. Let's see if you guys can spot what white should do. I think this was really hard for me, but it might be easy for someone here. So what do you guys think? White to play and increase the attack on the king side. I like it if you did a mix of throwing out moves and calculating. Sometimes it's hard to tell if people are just guessing or if they're actually thinking things through. But you should have an idea, right? You shouldn't just start calculating any random move. For example, I wouldn't just start calculating bishop takes f6 here, just because it's a forcing move. So, just take it in. Their king's kind of unsafe. The rooks are on the king side. White's pieces are all pretty active except for the bishop on e2. White's king is mildly unsafe. Not as unsafe as black's king, maybe. But black also has an interesting idea. Something they want to do. They want to play a move like rook h7 or king f8 and just run away. Bishop h6 does seem winning, and in the game I strongly felt inclined to bishop h6 because it's almost winning. However, I spotted a problem with bishop h6, and when I couldn't solve it, I just played bishop h6 and said, okay, you know what, let's see if my opponent can solve it, which I think was really dumb. I think that this attitude of let me play a move and see if my opponent can solve it is like a bullet player kind of attitude. It's not something that you should do in tournaments or if you're trying to play a good game. Although there is a place for saying, I'm going to make a move and let my opponent worry about it, it's not for high-tension calculation scenarios. It's not good to think that way in such a case. But what's wrong with bishop h6? No, I don't think rook h7 solves it. I think after rook h7 we can play... Sorry, I'm just calculating it again. I was planning bishop takes g7, rook takes g7, and queen h6. I thought that was probably close to winning. Yeah, knight g4 check is the problem. So in the game I play bishop h6, but there is actually a much better move to play. So maybe we could just take one more minute to try to find it. I looked at all the very alarming moves. I didn't look at the quiet moves that much. That was my problem. I think there are two pretty quiet moves that win the game. f4. I think f4 drops a pawn. Like I could play knight takes e4 after f4. Knight d5, there is something immediate to calculate. They would play bishop takes d5. Obama might change. I think you need to study the outpost square concepts. I think this would help you immensely. Because when you have an outpost square like d5, we don't want to occupy it with a piece right away. I think there's this common misconception that the outpost square needs to be occupied. That's why it's called outpost square. But that's not actually true. The outpost square should be occupied when nothing can take it there, because otherwise we're going to have to put a pawn there and it's going to fill the outpost square, which will neutralize its importance. So if we play like this, our whole advantage in the outpost square and more space and the weakness of the d6 pawn just disappears. This also closes the center, so they could run to e7 much more safely than before. So the two moves that I didn't consider are bishop h4, winning, and rook g2, probably winning. I haven't checked this with a computer, but I couldn't find any way to survive after bishop h4. The reason is they can't play king f8. I think we can just play rook g7. And this position is totally winning for white. So bishop h6 was suggested, but it's illegal, so not happening. If they play rook h6, we will play queen takes h6. Oh, bishop h6 by white, sorry. We've actually already talked about bishop h6. There's a big problem with it. In this position, if they play rook h7, we could actually just keep improving the position with like rook g2. And there might also be some kind of like fatal attack. I was even thinking about like queen g5 and then queen g2. I think that there's probably multiple good moves here, but rook g2 looks very simple. We're just gonna keep building until they can't take it anymore. Maybe here they could play king f8 actually. Maybe queen g5 is more critical. Yeah, I think this is much more critical. How did I not win this? Yeah, good question. So I didn't win it because during the game I didn't appreciate the strength of rook g2 and bishop h4. In the game, I looked at those moves only in a very superficial way. I didn't analyze them deeply. So what I'm telling you is what I discovered the same day after the game was over from analyzing with people. And so I played bishop h6, and I was hoping that he wouldn't find a defense. But you know what? Even bad players will find a defense when they're forced to. So they played rook h6. No, not knight e8. Knight e8 would give white a good long-term advantage. And I played queen h6 because it's pinned, but the idea is knight g4. And the reason I included this in this lesson about exchanges is the reason this favors black is not because they win a queen. It's because at the end everything is basically equal. We have 2 minor pieces each, 5 pawns each. The problem is too many pieces got traded. White was attacking. So the trade that I'm talking about was this knight g4 move. This was a spectacular move by black. They found a very good defense. And because it trades all the pieces, they came out okay and they got a draw. And I was moderately disappointed, especially since I felt I had such a promising position after my caveman attack in the opening. So that was kind of interesting. And maybe we could talk about another moment. Actually, I think probably now is a good time to wrap this up. That was a good example from one of my games. If you guys like that, you could hit me up on YouTube or something. Good question. Why not knight d5? At the end, after knight d5, well, first off, it was their move, so they were able to play queen h6 and trade everything. Now, let's talk about this position, because this is the first time when we could play knight d5 safely. If we play knight d5, they'll play bishop takes d5. And at every other point where knight d5 was possible, the same move is possible. This is their response. Like, I think you're saying don't take the pawn here, right? Like, here, knight d5 maybe. It's the same thing. Bishop takes d5 is very problematic. So he's asking, can you run? Well, my king's not under attack, so I'm not worried about running with my king. It's just that too many pieces are gone, so the attack is over. Rook g1, then queen f6, knight d5. In any position where we play knight d5, they're going to take it. So it doesn't really help at all. And here they could probably even liquidate their weak g-pawn. Play something like rook c8 with an attack. After this point, it was all just pretty dry. The main moment was with knight g4.